All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Virtual Residency Workshop 2025. It's Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, and this is our first session of the day. It's Reducing Barriers to Entry for New Users. Our moderator is Peggy Kay from Cal State Sacramento, and I'm going to turn the show over to Peggy to introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Henry. I think before we get started, I'll just give a little brief overview of what the panel's about, and then we'll go into introductions and then our questions. So, reducing barriers to entry for new users. Novice CI users often come from handheld or PC computing backgrounds, which is substantially different from the traditional CI combination of Linux, command line, remote, shared, batch. This gap leads to significant barriers to entry. In this panel, we'll identify some of the barriers and discuss approaches to reducing their impact on new CI users. Excuse me. So, hi, everybody. My name's Peggy Kay. I am from Sacramento State. I am the deputy CIO there. I am one of these new users. So, I'm super excited for our panel and the expertise that they bring. So, we'll go ahead and get started with introductions of the panelists. And we'll start off with Jason.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Sims, and I'm the Research Computing Manager at Swarthmore College. It's a position I've had there for 2 or 3 years, and it was a newly created position there, which is always interesting to kind of be the first in the gate there and try to introduce a new level of service. Prior to that, I had a similar role at Lafayette College just up the road in Easton, Pennsylvania. And I've been in the research computing world for, at this point, about 10 years. Before that, it was academic technology. So as Henry likes to tell people, I was sort of voluntold that I needed to figure out this space and spin it up at Lafayette. And it's the work that I've been continuing ever since. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Dina?
Hi, I'm Dina Strong from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. What you see in my background there is the university library. My primary job is officially uh, lead inf lead information design specialist, but about 10% of the time I'm also a research IT specialist in collaboration with the university library. And I'm here to sort of represent the folks who don't work with clusters, but do research and need some assistance with it.
Thanks, Dina. Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Woodford. I'm a professor of chemistry at Missouri Western State University. Missouri Western is a PUI, and I recently got a CC Star regional grant to implement high performance computing into the undergraduate curriculum, both with research and with teaching. It's a part of a statewide consortium that involves three other PUIs in the state. And so I've been spending a lot of my time trying to reduce the barriers for undergrads to be able to use HPC.
Thank you, Jeff. Dave?
Hi, I'm Dave Young. I'm the head of the High Performance Computing Group for the Alabama Supercomputer Authority. This is a state government agency. So in Alabama, if you're at any public educational institution, HPC access is free from our agency. My background is a PhD in quantum chemistry, but my other degrees are computer science, mathematics, and business.
Thanks, Dave. Jaime?
Good morning, good afternoon in Europe. I'm Jaime Comariza. I recently joined the University of Pennsylvania to direct the Penn Advanced Research Computing Center. And I was thinking while others were talking, I have been involved in research computing for about 30 years in many different roles, including training new and existing users. So hopefully what I'm going to say is going to be good for everyone.
Thanks, Jaime. And Daniel?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Daniel Benedict. I'm a graduate student here at Texas Tech. I got into research computing through my graduate school and been involved in high performance computing ever since then. And I hope to like contribute from my own student experience as well as the novice experience in research computing to these discussions.
Thanks, Daniel. So before we get started with the questions, we just want to encourage everybody, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we're happy to address them as well. So we're going to start off with the first couple questions are going to be all of our panelists responding to them. And the first question is, in your experience and observation, please share one top barrier you see to entry for new CI users. And we're going to start with Daniel.
Being a novice in research computing, one of the top barriers that I came across was the lack of proper documentations, right? The documentations that introduce novice to research computing in a very simplified manner, just like we have out there for popular applications and all. Because what I discovered from my experience is every research institution as well as university gets to like do and implement research computing based on their specific needs as well. So that would be like the topmost experience that I have with dealing with research computing as a novice as well.
Thanks, Daniel. Jason?
Yeah, so I would say one of the common issues and barriers is underestimating the amount of time it's going to require to be productive. We can attempt to reduce barriers as much as possible, and I think many of us have taken good steps towards that. But at some point, you still have to be this tall to ride this ride, right? And there's just people have research programs that are in flight or they have curricula that they use in their courses and, shifting towards adopting more research computing forward methods takes time. And I think a lot of people unfortunately believe that it will be very quick to get up and productive, but there are certain steps to go through. There's, testing, there's iterative work. And I just think a lot of them get frustrated. And so I don't know that we do as good of a job as possible about laying out the roadmap in front of them. And so that is one common barrier that I see.
Thanks, Jason. Dina?
This comes through my user experience filter, but the biggest problem I see over and over again is not meeting the researchers where they are. If what they want is a GUI, they will do whatever they can to use that instead. I've had programmers offer to write custom scripts for people that they won't use because they just don't feel comfortable on the command line. When I introduce them to a piece of software with a point and click interface that does the same thing slower, they will do the slower thing because they're comfortable with it, they're familiar with it, they'll use it.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, from my perspective, particularly with the undergraduate audience, I would say that the biggest barrier, and also, the undergraduate audience that's not computer science, so more like the chemistry and the physics and the biology, is that it is this sort of this sort of the stigma, I suppose, that to do high performance computing or to do supercomputing, you have to be like this computer guru or this wizard, or you have to be super smart and know all the details. You don't. You can be productive and still have a good experience even if you aren't a guru. And so just getting people to overcome that mental barrier to even start the process, even though they feel underprepared for it.
I think that's encouraging for all of us to know that. Dave?
Uh, we put a lot of work into ease of use innovations, but the thing we still struggle with is we get some students that are not native speakers of English, and no matter how well I word the what I'm saying, if they're only catching every third sentence, it's hard to communicate.
Right, thank you. Jaime?
So to add to what has been said, I think that the main problem is that this is going to be a new environment for everyone. And a good example is when I got to UPenn, I didn't know where to go. I have to have some time to become familiar with the facility, with the campus, go someplace. and have good directions. And in many cases, we don't use the proper language. We start using a lot of acronyms that people are really lost. Like when we start talking about compute nodes or Slurm or even CLI, people have no idea what that is. So we need to go down to their level to try to explain that in a very slow pace.
Thanks, Jaime. I'm going to have you follow up first for the second question that we have. For the top barrier you just mentioned, how did you come to realize that this was a top barrier? And what do you or your organization do to help new users overcome them?
Yes, so with respect to using too much technical language, it was a lot easier when the training was in person because you can see their faces. And when you start talking high level, people look confused. They will look somebody else. They will ask, what did he say? What did she say? So it was very easy to do. On Zoom, that's very difficult because as you see, we only see a few faces. So we don't know that. So the best thing is to try to use low-level language. And if you have to use a slide with all the, what I call the HPC jargon. So explain what a core is, explain what a compute node is, and so forth. So everything will have to be explained and very slowly so people can get it.
Thanks, Jaime. Jeff, do you want to add to that?
You're mute.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
still figuring out the Zoom thing,
Mm.
I guess. Okay. So I would just say, like, from my perspective, again, because my audience is more of the non-computer science people, so more of the, like the physical science. I just try to encourage my students to think of a supercomputer like it's another one of the scientific instruments in the lab, right? So, no one is born knowing how to use a spectrometer or a microscope, but you learn to use it and you learn its limitations, and then after a while it becomes routine and no big deal. Well, a supercomputer for scientific purposes can be thought of in the same way. Like all instruments, it has limitations. You have to, there has to be some baseline. So it a lot of the same concepts carry over, and so to put my science students a little bit more at ease, I try to encourage them to think of that as the mental model instead of thinking about this big shiny instrument that is too hard for me to learn.
Thanks, Jeff. Dave, do you want to add to that?
What we do is we try to present things multiple ways and give our users multiple options, see what clicks with them. They get a little PDF tutorial with their initial password. There's a bigger tutorial on the documentation site. Very popular are wrapper scripts. Nobody types qsub, nobody types sbatch. They type run my script. It asks you how many cores, how much memory, and it generates the qsub for you. We've actually swapped queue systems under the hood 4 times and nobody hardly noticed because they typed the same command and it worked the same way. And our new thing is open on demand, which is available to everyone now, but everybody's still in the try it and see stage on that one.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Jason.
Yeah, we have a series of workshops when possible, including one that's probably most pertinent here, HPC 101, where we definitely try to introduce them to, in some ways, how an HPC, building off what Jeff said. Yes, it can appear monolithic and scary and whatever, but honestly, as most of us are aware, it's just in some ways a bigger version of a laptop or of a workstation or of whatever. And so, whether they know it or not, they do understand at least a little bit of what's happening there, even if they've only spent their life in Windows or whatever. We do find, though, one of the challenges is, understanding hierarchical file systems. And so that's where we spend a lot of our time talking, because if you've, spent your life largely on iPhones, iPads, other, devices like that try to abstract the OS away from the user, naming files, how to put them in any sort of sensible layout is something that's very challenging. And we see that even now. I'm seeing that this summer with one of our researchers. Her students are naming folders things like, is this useful? Question mark, question mark, things like that with spaces and all of that. So we try to front load ways to reduce that as a barrier. But that certainly is a challenge that we find. But I think a lot of users are fairly surprised when they realize that, oh, this is just kind of a bigger version of much of what I do, day to day anyway.
Makes it a little less scary. Uh, Daniel.
Yeah, a lot of what I've also like said I would add to this is from what Amy talked about, where there's the more common misconception that people already understand this environment, and we kind of like start talking in technical terms as well. But what I've come to realize off of some of the training done here at my campus was like a lot more like making it very simple for the users in the training session as much as possible, trying to get a gauge of how they understand the technicalities or where they are, especially for like those from the physical sciences, not like the CS background as he mentioned earlier as well. So most of the training we do out there in Texas Tech helps to like bring users from the fundamentals of Linux before even pivoting all the way to like what high performance computing is as well.
Thanks, Daniel. Dina, would you like to add?
Sure. To me, the most useful solution is not the solution that you personally are the owner of. The most useful solution is the solution that they will use. There's one researcher that I've been working with for going on 10 years now, who's worked in several different departments. The most intricate one involved a bunch of Excel spreadsheets of tick data, but they were gathered from different surveys over different years. And like she understood how to map the different things together. I didn't come in understanding that. I walked out the door understanding that after asking her. I try always to do the beg, borrow, or buy options in any initial consult so that I don't walk in thinking there's only one solution. I walk in thinking which of these three options are going to work best for you with your tech comfort level, with your budget level, with your timeline. It turns out I have a colleague who was enthused to write custom Python scripts to do stitch-based cleanup. She wasn't going to accept that solution because she didn't understand it and couldn't modify it for herself. So it turns out that running all of those through OpenRefine was slower, but that was point and click, and that gave her recipes that she could reuse on additional sheets for herself. And she was much happier with that, even though it wasn't, high performance computing, custom code, stuff like that.
Great. I see we have a question comment in the chat. For those of you who run similar programs for biologists new to HPC, what have you found effective in making this successful and sustainable? Would anyone like to venture to respond?
Probably a raise your hand, but I don't know how to use it.
Thanks, David.
We've got two of those at Auburn University, and they take very different tactics. One, we give them a user count and gives them kind of a rote script to follow, and then they slowly give them, okay, now you figure out how to do this, and you figure out to do that, and they kind of build on more and more work on the part of the student, and less we're leading them by the hand. The second one, basically they make a virtual machine, they install Linux, and they work from the ground up on how do you set up your own Linux server. And both of them work as long as the instructor has laid it out well enough that each step is a reasonable size step for the student to build on what they learned in the previous step.
Thanks, Dave.
I will add, so in my staff, I have somebody who has a background in bioinformatics and genomics. And whenever there has to be a training for biologists or people at the medical school, this person will provide the training, and this person is familiar with many of the applications that are used for genomics analysis. So that will be a good way to go. Not every school is going to have these people with this background, but knowing the science behind that is very important in order to help them effectively.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to the third question, which is CI professionals generally and CI facilitators in particular have primary responsibility for helping new users overcome barriers. But what are the things we sometimes do that make things worse instead of better? And I'll go ahead and start with Jason.
You're asking me to answer when I'm trying to think of what
Okay,
I think,
we can
what
come
we
back.
no, that's fine. I mean, what we do that makes it worse. So I would say one of the things. So as CI professionals, we want to help. Like that's what our primary, I think, motivation is. We want researchers to be productive. We want them to be delighted, to use another Henry Neimanism. And I think in the pursuit of that, sometimes we are overzealous in the amount of assistance that we're willing to give. There's a very fine line between empowering researchers to do what they need to do and learning the skills that they need to be productive independently versus providing too much help and doing it for them almost. And once we cross that line where we are becoming more responsible for their code or editing stuff, if they don't understand what we've done and they don't understand how to maintain it, we now own that project. And that's a problem. And there sometimes has to be a line where we say, we can provide resources for you to empower yourself and to understand this and to take ownership of this. We can, lead the proverbial horse to water, but at some point we may have to step back and say, when you're ready, we're ready, but I can't take this further right now. So that is something I think we tend to get into. And also, finally, related on that point, and this tends to happen with non-traditional disciplines, we might, as CI professionals, understand very intuitively how our resources could benefit a researcher or their lab or the types of teaching that they're doing. But if they're not in a space to be ready to receive that and to be willing to put in the work to do it, you can't force them. No matter how much we believe it's going to help them or know that it would help them, whether it's to be more productive or to reduce time to science or to encourage students, you can't force it. And so I think on both of those fronts, trying a little, being a bit overzealous does sometimes result in problems.
Great point. Jeff, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I guess so. Since I'm relatively new at trying to get undergrads involved in this, my inclination as a pedagogical style, as a professor, is an inquiry-based approach, right? So the idea is, to give students a problem and some basic background information and to kind of put them in the groups, with some mentoring to help them try to solve the problem, as opposed to just me telling them, here's the stuff you need to know. So the idea behind that is if they can figure it out themselves, they learn a little bit better than by just having to remember what I say. So I I am still trying to refine that idea when trying to introduce HPC to, especially to my undergrads who are, again, some of them are a little bit nervous, anxious. Um, like what Jason was saying about trying to understand the file system, it's absolutely true. They don't really know where their data is, and so the best way to introduce that in a hierarchical, to explain the hierarchical file system to anxious new users in an inquiry-based way. I tried it this past spring. I may have made caused more problems than I solved. I don't know. I don't know if I reduced or increased the anxiety level. I don't know. That's still a work in progress. So anyway, we'll see how it goes in the future.
Thank you, Jeff. Dina?
I'm sorry, I was in chat. Can you remind me which question we're on?
Sure. This one is about what are things we sometimes do that make things worse instead of better?
Okay. I keep looping around to not listening to what the actual problem is instead of what the words that they use are. So many people tell me, I'm told I need a database, and there's so many things that that could mean. They could mean they need a content management system to present a website. They could mean they need data analysis. They could mean they have a bunch of data that isn't in a database that needs to be organized somehow, but they don't even know how it goes together, right? Uh, you've got to really get an understanding of what their entire problem is in order to help them solve it, in my book.
Good advice. Jaime.
I would say that the most important thing is to avoid monologues. So if we're doing some training, make sure that we have audience participation, that they have the opportunity to ask questions. If not, you ask questions. If you go from one session to the other, don't go right away. Stop, have some exercises, have some questions, and make sure that people are getting what you're trying to teach them. But above all, avoid monologues. People get bored, people will leave, and you're not going to be effective that way.
Great advice. Daniel.
Yeah, in a very similar project to what Jeff is trying to do at Tech, we have a sort of trainings for undergrad where we kind of like introduce the concept of high performance computing using a set of single board clusters, where we train the undergraduate student on the concept of networking, setting up a HPC cluster with something less than $1,000 for them to just get a visualization of what HPC is, not the complex machine room or something like that. And this has proven a lot more resourceful where we have the students themselves performing in some competitions like the single board clusters competition where they had to like benchmark a very mini cluster and get the concept of high performance computing. And that has shown a very interactive way of helping the student understand how HPC works, as well as setting up a resource to understanding it better, as well as providing them guidance as well that helps them improve. Why not feeling like they could break something in $1 million equipment as well?
Thank you. Dave.
When we're training our staff, one of the things that's hard to get in the mind of my staff people, you can't give the same answer to everybody. The new student with poor English might need you to type out some example commands. The computer science professor might want you to go into great technical depth about under the hood, why it's happening the way it is, technology wise. And what makes it worse is when I've got a whole bunch of files that I can just copy and paste the answer from the last time I answered this question. Well, not everybody, it's not the right answer for everybody. You've got to look at the individual users. And even when we do that, sometimes we get it wrong, and I misguess the technical level of the person I'm talking to, and have to backtrack and figure out what's right for them.
Good point. Nabil, did I pronounce your name right? I think you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just want to share quickly my own experience with providing free resources for novice and cyber infrastructure. They might not be directly related to biology, but I see some question in the comment about someone who want to create some entry-level content about biology. I created free resources in Wiki, and actually I wrote a paper and it accepted in PERC about using very simple language, very simple concept to introduce cyber infrastructure and AI basic concept to high school students in very simple language. So it could be actually used by anyone, undergrad, grad, or any faculty or any researcher. I put the link in that chat, and if anyone interested, welcome to reach me or contact me. It's really very simple. It uses simple language. It uses emojis for high school students to introduce supercomputer and AI concept in extremely simple language and about 14 lesson and 14 workshops. So this is my approach, to lower the barrier to introduce these concepts. That's all for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for sharing the link. We're going to go on to the next question we have regarding what are some misconceptions that novice CI users have about CI environments? Are there any technological tools or platforms that can help bridge the gap between traditional computing and CI environments for new users? And I'm going to start off with Tina.
I apologize, I was typing.
I catch you every
Yeah,
time, don't I?
yes. So
Do you, this is about technological tools or platforms that can help bridge.
Okay. Yeah. Um, I don't know how many people have heard of OpenRefine. It's kind of it's one of my back pocket favorite things to offer to people for whom Excel is not enough, but full-on databases are too much. It's great for data cleaning, and it's choose your own adventure in terms of how it's non-destructive how you want to manipulate things. But in general principles, anytime you can add a command, if you've got a command line, if you can add a GUI on top of it, it is going to be helpful to a lot of people. In the Saving Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Online project, we started out with 1,300 volunteers from around the world, and there was a command line and Docker-based way of running a particular process. Over the course of a weekend, we took a Jupyter notebook and stuck a point and click button on top of it. And all of a sudden, we went from 30 people able to use it to 900 people able to use it. And it was super helpful.
That's great. Um, Dave, do you want to add to that?
So, yeah, one of the misconceptions we get is everything is a GUI or everything is a web browser. And yeah, we provide that when we can, but sometimes there is no other way than to go to the command line and you just have to tell them the facts of life. This is what you got to do this research. Another misconception we get is nobody thinks about how much memory does it take to run my Microsoft Word. And now we have to get them thinking about how much memory, how many cores, what's efficient. We give them a command to mine the queue system data after the job is done. What percentage of the memory you requested did you use? And then a parallel efficiency percent on did I choose a good number of processor cores to do that job? And when they log in, we've got a little login script that checks the last 10 jobs. And if some of them were really unreasonable in their memory or number of core requests, it'll pop up a little message saying, hey, you had parallel efficiency 2%. That something was not right with the number of cores you requested.
Good point. Jeff, did you want to add?
Yeah, so I totally agree with David is that uh, uh, so the resources required is in general for the new user. I guess for my undergraduate audience is a big mystery. When I explain to my students like this is how you estimate the amount of RAM you're going to need for your job, it was kind of like whoa, that's a lot of RAM. So okay, yeah, it is. That's why we use the big ass computer. So yeah. So anyway, but I would say back to the topic of like an interface. I love Open on Demand. Oh my God, it has. I think that really reduced the anxiety level for again my students who come in with a little bit of anxiety because it's already something that they're familiar with. And again, so the one that we are using that the University of Missouri folks have set up is has a command line terminal option to it, so you can do all the typing, but there's a lot of point and click stuff, and that's good too. So just having that as sort of like the gateway from all Windows, all touchscreen to hardcore only typing, I think that's a great bridge. So
Would anybody like to talk about uh, the good or bad experiences you've had with on demand to add on to what Jeff had?
I mean, we're going through a process where we're shifting to open on demand as the primary interface to our HPC. We've had it available for a number of years as kind of an option when people needed a GUI interface, to use such software. But SSH was always our primary way in with keys and stuff like that. And we just went through a process over the last year or so of kind of refining how we do accounts and how we approach and train and think about accessing HPC to where open on demand has become that's the primary way. And if you are a power user or if you have a specific workflow that relies on SSH or things like that, that still is available. We can absolutely do that. But the way that we have our authentication and stuff set up, you don't even need to generate an SSH key to come in through Open On Demand. We have it set up through our single sign-on. Works really seamlessly. It reduces time to create accounts. It reduces time to get on there and be productive, especially for classroom or pedagogical situations like that. So it's been nothing but a positive for us. I don't have anything negative to say about Open On Demand whatsoever. Other than that, it's primarily built in Ruby. And so if you really want to start to dig into the configuration and scripting it and doing some stuff, you got to work with Ruby, which in my opinion is not the most elegant of languages to try to wrestle with. But aside from that, in terms of from a user functionality perspective, it's really wonderful.
Thanks. Dave, did you want to add?
So we're newer in the Open On Demand, that it's been open to all users just for a few months. The initial install can be challenging. There's a lot of little security configuration and whatnot to get it talking to your HPC system and your environment. So give yourself time for the system administrators to work with it in a development environment before you just go saying it's going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen. So far, we've gotten good feedback from the users that have been testing it and using it. I actually thought it could have been better than it was. So we rewrote the template system ourselves. So there's no pound SBatch or pound PBS directives in our templates. And I plan to open source that once I get through 20 other things on my to-do list later this year.
Thanks. I think there's a question that Leslie has put in there about, and Jason, I see you answered one of them, but what does your charge model look like for Open On Demand as a primary way to access the cluster?
For us, we're a community model. There's no condominium. There's no charge of any sort, but we're a fair share model, so everybody is treated equally. And once in a while, all the seats are up, and then I got to go ask for more hardware to try to keep things rolling.
Great, thanks, Jaime.
Yeah, on this question, so I agree with all of you that Open On Demand is a great tool. In particular, if you are going to use applications that need a graphical interface, great. If you try to do that via SSH, it's going to be slow. Through Open On Demand, the performance is a lot better. But I would say that one of the misconceptions is that using an HPC system or CI is difficult. And it is not. When I go as a guest lecturer to a class, I take about a sheet with about 10 or 15 commands for the students that they want to use. Those are the initial commands that they need. And with practice and over time, they're going to learn more commands and be more efficient and proficient in using the system. So it's not that complicated to use it. It will take experience and practice, and that's all what it takes.
Thanks, Jaime. Jason, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the charge model question. So this is from the perspective of a small institution, which Swarthmore is, as well as Lafayette College. We don't charge back. It is a campus service that we offer. Researchers, faculty members do have the ability, if they want to buy into a condo system where they have priority preempt access, but when they're not running jobs on it, it is available as a resource to the community. But we do not charge or anything like that. That's just antithetical to the model that we have. We would rather users not have to think about that. Like, we don't want them to worry about, well, what is it going to cost me if I use this in my classroom? Or, what if I want to try something new, but I end up wasting, 500,000 CPU hours and it's not productive. Well, now I've just, paid for that and whatever. We want to encourage users to get on there. Now, that model doesn't work everywhere. There are lots of reasons why that model doesn't work, but certainly at many smaller institutions, I would say that's a more common model than charging back. We just want it to be there as a service for our users to be productive on.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit of common misconception as well, which is we users, like typically the new users, always feel like the HPC is only for like big simulation, big data, right? Like the regular workflow that could work on my personal computer is necessarily not needed on the HPC, which is something I've also learned from other colleagues as well, where they think until I have something that's tantamously huge before I get to think about using HPC as a resource, which is something I feel like it's being addressed by a lot of institutions where you could just come and do your simple Python script or your simple R script to do your job on the HPC, and introducing the general users to how you could also use this system and not just go to your default setting of using your sit-at-home computers as well could help introduce more users into the CI environment.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to go on to the next question of how can experienced CI users and professionals contribute to reducing barriers to newcomers as professionals? And maybe I'll combine this also with educational strategies or resources that have been proven effective in helping new CI users.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
Technically, this wasn't research, but this was scads and scads of data for saving Ukrainian cultural heritage online. We were trying to rescue the entire set of public-facing humanities data for an entire country when the bombs started falling in 2022. This spun up in 4 days, all volunteer, and like it's the intersection of research time pressure and data volume with theater tech. Okay, we don't know what we're doing. We got to figure it out right now. So the things that helped so much with that were it started out day one, things were on the command line, and day four, things were in Jupyter notebooks, and day six, things were in web interfaces. And so correspondingly, the number of people who could do the thing kept expanding day by day by day as we went from 600 to 800 to 1,300 people in less than a week. And I know that it's not the theoretical ideal, but sometimes you don't have time for the theoretical ideal, whether it's they don't have time to spend a year studying CS, or the grant is going to be cut tomorrow or next week. How much research can we do in the next 5 days? So self-documenting, self-training. We had group editable things. We worked very hard off of things like Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Slack. That was how we kept ourselves organized. And so having the people who are doing it document what they don't understand for the next generation people they're going to hand it off to was also very, very helpful, because then it was the people who barely knew what they were doing, writing it down for the people who totally didn't know what they were doing, and then keep continuing to improve it along the way.
Thank you, Dina. Jaime, do you want to add to?
Yes, so I will say that experienced CI facilitators should make an effort to interact with new people. And with that, I mean that they have to read their faces, their expressions, be simple, not be too complex, and listen to them, listen to what they want to do, and know that they are beginners, so they don't know very of the many things that you know. So that is very important. And then produce excellent documentation. I always get this answer from systems people and from other people saying that, oh, my program is well documented or is self-explanatory. That is not true. That's what comments are made for. So even if you have a section or a line, put a comment in there so people will know what that line is doing. And that's very important because people don't usually read documentation. And if it is not proper documentation, they are not going to waste time trying to read that. So document and properly document all what you're doing.
Thanks, Jaime. Good advice. Jason.
I would just say that, as I think most of us understand, accessing CI resources is not much of a barrier. For instance, you can go through Access, there's lots of ways to get compute resources to do a project. The important thing is the human side of facilitation. So particularly at smaller institutions, we pride ourselves on being able to provide that very white glove kind of attention. I think that most technical projects, particularly things like regional collaborations, they run a risk of failure if there are not on the ground human resources that can be drawn from regularly. Nobody wants to send an email to a generic address that maybe somebody at a different institution is answering or call someone they've never met. They would rather darken your door. They know you personally. They want to come and talk to you. And so being that human resource. Now, again, it is a line. You don't want to become a crutch for them or become that pillar upon which their entire research program becomes dependent. But nonetheless, being that human resource to really understand and to ask that question, much like Dina was saying, of what are you trying to accomplish? Like it's not about what they're saying or about their immediate problem. It's about understanding that and then stepping back and saying, let's just talk about what you're trying to do. Because so very often, what they think the solution is, they get tunnel vision. And it's also about stopping saying yes. Like if someone says, can you set up a share for me? Can you install this software? Can you create this environment? If you're just like, yes, you don't have that chance. That's a missed opportunity to say, well, tell me about what you're trying to do. Like, what's your goal here? Like, let's make sure that that's the right approach. And taking that time shows that you care, that you want to listen to them, that you want to understand what they're trying to do. And that I think is the most important thing a CI professional can do is to be that human component. It's not about getting them onto a technical system. That's relatively easy. But it's being that human support, which is so critical.
Thank you. Dave, did you want to add anything to this?
We support a dozen universities, and so I have to adapt to a dozen different cultures. I've got one that's got a high performance computing class. That's great. I've got a bunch that have a little teach a little bit of it in their biology class or their math class or whatnot. We get some where the faculty sit down one-on-one when it's a savvy faculty member, and they're really the teachers, and I'm just providing little technical details. And then we get some where the faculty member says, "Go learn this on your own." Faculty member doesn't know how to do it, and so we need to give enough tutorial to get them past that.
Great, thank you. Okay, in the spirit of helping our audience learn from our mistakes so that they can make exciting new mistakes instead of the same old mistakes, what's one of the dumbest mistakes you've made in trying to help a new user overcome a barrier to entry? What did you learn from that? And on the flip side, what's one of the smartest things you've done to overcome a barrier to entry? And I'm going to start with Daniel.
Thank you very much. One of the dumbest mistakes that I've done was provide a one fix all solution to a new user, right? Trying to just make a simple simulation and just providing the Slump script to do that effectively. But doing that in the inside, I found out that that was pretty troubling because when they ran into issues, trying to figure it out became very complex, more like instead of explaining the how to do this directly, rather than providing the direct solution for these users. And um, from that experience, I understand the need to create a more effective documentation for our user here at Texas Tech. Similarly, with also helping the users understand the process better than just providing a general solution for every problem they come across, because this takes away the learning process from them, and then they keep running into issues that they could easily solve, but not knowing about how to solve the issues makes them think they can't. So introducing them to ways of understanding how these processes works and how they could easily fix them help improve the efficiency as well.
Thanks, Daniel. Jeff, do you want to add anything to this?
I don't really have, well, no.
Sorry, I put you on the spot, didn't I? I'll go with Jason. Do you want to add something to this?
I mean, yeah, I think early on, one of the things that I tried to do in my, zealous attempt to be helpful, was to try to make the HPC environment that we had work for 100% of the use cases. And that's just not typically how that goes. Again, falling back to Henry Neiman, thank God for his, sage advice. he told me pretty early on when I was building stuff, he said, look, you build an HPC to solve about 90% of the use cases. And the other 10% of the use cases would require almost 100% of your effort to try to support. And so in some cases, it becomes a matter of evaluating what the use case is and saying, you know what, this may not be the best fit for you. The environment that we have may not work because either, we have Rocky Linux and your workflow is incredibly dependent upon Ubuntu. And, hey, we can try to deal with containers and we can try to create custom environments through SPAC and through all of these other kind of things. But at some point, the amount of effort there, it may just be best to help them find a different place, like an access resource or something like that. So one of the mistakes that I made was just trying to solve for every single use case, and in so doing, actually led to a negative outcome for some of those early users because they get frustrated. They want to be productive, they want to get up and running, and when it's just one barrier after another, that's not good. So sometimes being able to back away and saying, I can't really help you here for this specific use case, but I can help you find where best you can do this work and be productive was something that I had to learn pretty early on, and it's been a helpful lesson ever since.
Thanks, Jason. Dina, do you want to talk about what you put in the chat?
Sure. This is a real life story with someone I actually knew from grade school onward, who is now a brain surgeon. She works with collaborators all over the world in neuroscience, and the process of getting access through the firewall, the form that they wanted her to fill out was just absurdly long and complicated, and it assumed expertise in networking. She's a brain surgeon. She's not a network analyst. She doesn't know what CIDR notation is. So I said, oh, sure, I know of a lot of ways we can make this form easier. And, off goes confident little me thinking that, surely everybody wants a good user experience, right? Turns out the obstacle was part of the point for the group that had created it. And I still haven't won that one.
Thanks, Dina. Does anybody else want to add to this?
Well, maybe I do want to add something after all. Okay, so I feel bad for just saying no. Okay, well, I would say one of the smarter things, maybe clever thing, is what we're trying to do with this grant is to introduce HPC concepts and ideas earlier in the undergraduate curriculum, and not just for computer science, but for all of the physical sciences, so that when they become grad students, because where do grad students come from? They come from undergrads, right? So that when they become grad students and they're going to, Texas Tech or Illinois or UPenn or wherever they end up going, one of the big research schools, you don't have to teach them yet again. Oh my gosh, the new class of grad students need to know what a file system is again. So they already know that, hopefully on some level. So I think I see that as a way to sort of reduce the barrier for you, is to kind of front load that learning into the undergraduate curriculum where it can potentially belong.
So I
Thank
would
you.
say that one thing that I didn't do very well was to define expectations. So at my previous place of employment, we used an allocation model similar to Access. And there was this particular faculty member who used their allocation very quickly. So I was trying to be nice, and I told the faculty member, I'm going to increase your allocation on a temporary basis so you can compute until the allocation is reset. Well, I didn't put that in writing, so the faculty member assumed that the new allocation was his allocation plus the increase that I gave him. So it was very difficult and problematic to try to reduce his allocation back to whatever he was given. So if you can put it in writing, do it.
Good advice. Dave, did you want to add?
I, with my staff, one of the issues is we'll start naturally falling into talking to people like we're talking to another attendee at an HPC conference, and that not everybody's going to get that. And our acid test is one of my groups with the most hand holding needed is a 65-year-old veterinarian. If you can get that person to understand it, you have done something good. What we really did well was documentation. We have put an enormous amount of effort into over 1,000 pages of documentation, and there's a complete little mini self-study class in high performance computing if you're willing to read through that And so a lot of the problems are just you didn't find the right thing in the documentation and read the right thing, and it was all right there for you already.
Which kind of goes to the next question about, do you have problems with users who simply don't know if a service, software, or documentation exists or is available to them? How do you improve that situation? Dave.
Want me to continue on?
Yeah, you can continue on.
We've had that, and I don't know how many times, and I've so many different ways I've tried to reach out. And some faculty member says, I've been here 10 years and I never knew this was available to me. One thing that really helped was we got it put in the new faculty orientation program at every university. So as they're starting their first day in the job as faculty, they find out this is available to me. We also do an annual campus visit of some sort, and I send a message not only to all my users but to the department heads and said pass this on, and very often the new faculty get it from the department head that okay, this is here and someone's going to be here on campus you can talk to. And a lot of times 15 minutes of answering questions face to face did more good to make them comfort with the idea of using this than all the documentation and PDFs and whatnot. For some reason, that just speaks better when I can answer their specific questions about their specific research and their specific software.
Thank you. Jaime, do you want to add to that?
Yes, so to add to what I said before, well, actually, I have not had any problems. I would say probably misunderstandings or even difference of opinions. Uh, but you need to be clear as much as you can. In my previous employment, I was also a faculty member, so it helped because I can talk to faculty members one-on-one. And with users, with the students, that's a little bit different. So you need to be very diplomatic. You need to encourage them to read the documentation. Usually, everything should be spelled out in there, whether this application is available to them or not. In particular, if that's a commercial application, somebody has to pay for that. And try to solve the problem as diplomatically as you can. You don't need to make enemies, in particular if they are faculty members.
Good point. Would anybody else like to contribute to this answer? Okay. Now I'm going to go on to, do you see problems facilitating new users utilizing cloud resources? Who would like to start that one?
I mean, I can just say no, there's no real issue there. Sometimes that is appropriate. Oftentimes people may benchmark test stuff out locally. They may, run subsets of stuff and then they'll spin up to TAC or Anvil or whatever the case may be. We've also found one of the most, I think, underutilized gems in the Access playbook is Jetstream 2. Being able to give an instance to a user on which they have root access and they can easily get a GPU, for instance, and they can put whatever OS they want on it. If they want to run Ubuntu, great, they can do that. If they run a different flavor of Red Hat derivative, they can do that. Awesome. They even have experimental Windows instances that people can get on. Sometimes cloud resources are great. So we don't really see a conflict there. We think that they're appropriate for instance, different tails of the research spectrum. If somebody just has a one-off project that they need to do, they can quickly get spun up. They do 2, 3, 4 weeks of analyses, whatever, they're done, they're off. That's a great case for cloud. Also, if they're doing a much larger or more intensive project that could not be supported locally, great, let's figure out how to support that in the cloud. But for almost everything else, we try to be on-prem first. But we don't see a conflict there. We don't think we're in competition with cloud. We think that it's just different, facets of the same overall research computing service that we offer to our institutional members.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, please.
Up until this year, my answer would have been, hey, The cloud's fantastic. I have helped so many researchers, especially in multi-institutional collaborations, or if they don't have tenure yet and they're not sure they're going to get it, you know, build the thing that works for them in the place that works for them. And then all of a sudden this year we discover, oh yeah, we've got how many millions of dollars of budget cuts? We don't even actually know how many millions of dollars of budget cuts. And a bunch of licenses are coming up, and we don't know which of these services we're going to be able to continue to afford to support. So when you intersect that level of uncertainty with, in some cases, I mean, people people just fundamentally have an easier time with Google than they do with Amazon, given what they've generally brought to, to their life experiences so far. But Google has got a lot of things to be aware of about security, privacy, HIPAA, what is and is not approved to put there. And then there's the whole, if you're using something like ChatGPT, which AI are you feeding it into? What is that going to impact? What does the integration of AI into various cloud services, like our privacy department is head scratching about what to do about the Box integration with AI now, because we've our HIPAA storage is in Box and so is an AI now, and we're like, oh dear, we're not sure what to do about that. So it's not an unqualified yes, the way it would have been 3 years ago for me. Um, I also just globally think that Amazon's infrastructure is so hard to understand, especially the financial implications of, that you really need someone who deeply understands it and the price model to be working hand in hand with anybody who's setting something up for the first time on that.
Thanks. I'm going to go to Jaime next and then to Dave.
Yeah, so I agree with Dina. I don't have a problem from people using the cloud, the commercial cloud, but I have some advice for them. One is somebody has to pay for that. It's usually the faculty member. So make sure that you have enough money to pay for that, and make sure that you don't waste resources, because anything that you waste, you still have to pay for that. And the second is that you need good support for most applications. Recently, I was helping somebody running Quantum Espresso that couldn't run it in the cloud, and we don't have access to the cloud system as a kind of SSH access. So it was difficult to find out the problem. But if you don't have some people to support the use of the cloud, it's going to be a lot more difficult for users, and they're going to waste more resources.
Good point. Dave?
We don't directly support cloud, but anytime I have to tell someone, no, I can't help you, the next thing I'm usually saying is look at the Rescale cloud. Rescale has pay by the hour licenses on these really expensive software packages that we can't afford. They've got ITAR compliant cloud instances. And so they're usually my here's your plan B, I can't help you, but go look at Rescale.
Good. Jeff, did you want to add anything?
We can't afford cloud, so no. Let's just be honest.
Daniel, did you want to add?
No.
Okay.
I mean, can I just say that, commercial cloud is one thing, but there's a lot you can do within Access. I mean, just why wouldn't we think of that first? Just putting that out there.
That's a good point. Okay. So I have one more question and then we can open up more questions to people. Dina brought this up, but do you think artificial intelligence models are mature enough to be beneficial to new users? If so, how? Dave.
So the current generation of AI models are one of the easiest to use things we've ever seen, and they're also one of the easiest to get bad results out of that we've ever seen. So you have to do a lot of setting expectations. You've got to learn what it works for, what it doesn't work for, double check its answers. I was reviewing a proposal the other day that had 4 fake references that somebody had used in AI, and it hallucinated this reference to relevant work. That really counts against you in your proposals when you're putting in false information. So you can use it, but you've really got to learn how to use it well. And I'm going to put a thing in chat with one of my blog posts on a whole bunch of tips for using it well and avoiding some of these problems. That said, making your own AI model is a totally different world to support and a totally different tools. And you better plan on a lot getting in real deep on technology if you're going to do that stuff.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add to the discussion about AI?
I'll just say that when you're having pizza, don't forget to put glue on your pizza for extra cheesiness. That's what AI says.
Yeah. Okay, we've gone through all of our questions for the panelists. Happy to open it up to the audience if you have questions, or if the panelists themselves have something that we did not cover that you'd like to share.
I may sound a bit like a broken record, but for me, the place where research IT advocacy interacts with therapy is we can't change what our clients do, think, perceive. We can't just say, don't be afraid of the command line, don't be afraid of the HPC. We don't get to tell them what they think or what they feel. What we can do is change how we reach out to them and how willing we are to come up with, least harm sorts of principles in terms of we may think that the HPC may be the best thing, but if they're not going to use it, then give them what they're going to use.
Thank you, Dina. Any other last thoughts, questions? I see some things going through the chat. Does cloud computing companies have any special institution-wide plans which may be used?
I can comment on that. So the answer is yes. So basically, institutions will negotiate, hopefully with the three main commercial clouds, and they will get a very good discount on whatever plan they do. But it has to be set for a year or two for a period of time. And in fact, I know that some places that have gotten very good deals with that, but you have to be careful because you can negotiate the cost per CPU hour or per GPU hour, but then they will get you with storage. So you have to make sure that you deal the complete package. And I want to make a comment on, there was a question or a comment before about the business models. And I didn't want to say anything because that is opening a can of worms. Some schools are trying to implement 100% pay for research computing, which faculty members don't like it because it's going to be very expensive for them. But it's coming. Many schools, in particular the state schools, they only charge for the cost hardware, the hardware cost recovery, which is probably a good model. But then somebody has to pay for labor, somebody has to pay for utilities, and a few other things. So it's not completely free. And then there will be more talk about business models for research computing.
That's a good point. Any other thoughts to share? We got 5 minutes. Dave.
I'm going to go back to AI for a minute, if just for people's information. You see some very diverse things in the AI literature. You've got these AI entrepreneurs that have this super optimistic outlook that no time at all it's going to be able to do the work of a professor or something. And a lot of them, maybe that'll happen someday, but it might be 20 or 100 years before that happens. So that's not really as close around the corner as they're trying to tell the investors it is. If you're going to get into the AI, look for the articles by the people who have used it that said, I had all these problems and here's how I got around them. And here's where you just ran into a limit. You just couldn't do this It just didn't have the capability with any AI model out there. I will say if you want to play with it, the one I like is called Perplexity. It's a search engine that uses the AI to summarize the search results. Because it uses search, it's not limited to its training set and what knowledge it knows. It's limited to everything it can find on a search. And it has a half dozen models, it'll auto choose the best model for your answer. So you can not only use it for search, I occasionally use it for programming tasks and for making images and other things. Not always the best one for making images, but sometimes it does well. Uh, uh, so it's something we have to watch, and it's changing every few months. You'll find that now it does something it didn't 3 months ago, and the interface has changed a little bit, and there's a new option. And realize you're playing with cutting edge technology that's changing very quickly. Uh, that's probably enough. Dana?
I'm going to also throw in here, be aware of the biases that are going to be baked into the systems. Uh, there's a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. There's another book called Algorithms of Oppression and I have seen statistics that are kind of appalling coming out of the humanities in terms of what percentage of AI images reinforce negative stereotypes about people. It's not, it's easiest to spot in the imagery, but it's probably there in the text as well, and it's going to be harder to spot if research aggregates that are being presented to you as fact are baked on assumptions that have baked in things like that.
Dave, did you want to
Yeah,
follow up?
yeah. So the AI does worst when there's not one right answer. If it's something that there are two politically motivated answers and about an equal number of people touting both answers, AI is not going to be the way to answer that and find facts and do things. So there are times when it's just not the right tool. And yes, there are AIs that are left leaning or right leaning politically or libertarian or authoritarian, just because of their training data that they tend to lean a little bit one way. And Dina brought up a very good point about some of the built-in biases from their literature. Some of them are a slave to their training data. I tried to use it to write some fiction. Well, it was trained on this off copyright 1950s sci-fi, and it gave us to be the cheesiest, most horribly written science fiction you ever saw.
So we have one more question in the chat, and maybe we could just end with that. Could you talk about the add-on tools or alternatives to your HPC environment that extend your capabilities? Someone mentioned something called Jetstream 2.
Well, since I was a former Access member, I can speak about that. So Jetstream 2 is one of the NSF-funded HPC facilities in the country, which is part of a general program called Access. And Jetstream provides some virtual machines or some hardware that is going to be used for that. You cannot add that into your system. You can request an allocation, so you can access that system, but not really add that into your own. Or it's not a tool basically. The question is tools. So that is what Jetstream 2 is, and it's out of Indiana University.
Thank you, Jaime. We're at time. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. I know I've learned a lot and appreciate your expertise. I appreciate the audience and all the questions that you asked and the contributions that you had too. So I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, panel, for a terrific session. And once again, you can see from all of the discussion going on in the Zoom chat how engaged people are. This is just a terrific session, and we thank you very much. Let's give our panel a round of virtual applause. Um, and I will go ahead and stop the recording.